Hello and welcome to NCSY Pulse powered by NCSY alumni. You can follow us on Instagram at NCSY Pulse. We have a very special interview today. We are joined by Lizzy Savetsky, who is a leading Jewish influencer and pro-Israel activist. She is a world-famous blogger, speaker, and writer, and to us, most importantly, she is a renowned source of Jewish inspiration and pride. Lizzy, welcome to NCSY Pulse. It's so fun to have you.
It's so fun to be here. I just got a chance to meet some of your kids last week, and it was awesome. They're the best.
Yes, you are referring to the JSU President's Conference. You were
Yes.
one of the speakers there, and I have to tell you, the feedback we got from the kids, from the staff, really from everybody, was incredible.
Mm.
And we're just so honored that not only that you joined us there, but that you liked us enough to come back and, and do it again.
I
So
I always say anytime I get to be around young Jewish people who are blazing the trail for my kids, I get so much more than I give. So it was really a joy.
outstanding. Thank you. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. You're from Texas. I'm from Minnesota. You probably couldn't find two more different out of town places, but both not New York. Um,
Totally.
so tell us a little bit about your Jewish experience growing up in Texas.
My Jewish experience, wow, definitely not like the one my kids are having in New York City. I grew up in Fort Worth, which is pretty relatively small Jewish population. I think at the time I was growing up, we had maybe 1,000 Jewish families. Um, it's probably less now, actually. I grew up, there was literally a church on every corner. Um, there was the Reform Temple and the Conservative Synagogue. And then later on in my life, I think maybe around middle school, high school, Chabad popped up. Surprise, surprise, Chabad is everywhere. So there were not a lot of options. So my Jewish identity really came from my home, from my family, from my parents. They raised me on the stories of my ancestors. I was always, from a very young age, very aware of where I came from and how important it was to be Jewish and how critical it was to marry a Jewish person. I remember hearing that even from such a young age. My mom would always say, if you don't want to marry him, don't date him. Um, and I didn't even really understand why until I was much older, but I knew
Right.
that this was something that was really important to my family. I didn't grow up with a kosher home. I didn't grow up observant. Like, for example, a typical Friday, we would light the Shabbat candles and then I would go cheer at the football game. So we had like two different kinds of Friday night lights, if you will.
That's very
Um,
funny. Yeah.
like in a lot of senses, I had a very traditional Texas upbringing. I was a cheerleader. I competed in the Miss Teen Texas pageant. I sang on a country music show. But I always knew that I was different. I remember as young as 5, kids asking me, my peers, wait, so you don't believe in Santa Claus? Wait, and you don't believe in Jesus? So I knew that there was a big difference between me and my friends. Um, but I never felt ashamed of it or sad about it. I think because of the home I was raised in, I was always very proud to be different and to be Jewish. I had to go to Hebrew school 3 times a week. I had a bat mitzvah, um, which was a big priority to my dad, especially in my family. Um, but I felt in a weird way like an ambassador for the Jewish people. Like I remember being in 3rd grade and the conversation in class somehow turned towards the Holocaust, and my teacher kind of stopped the class and gave me the floor and was like, Lizzy, tell us about the Holocaust. And
Wow.
here I am, 8 years old or whatever, um, telling my friends about my family members and what they went through. And so I felt from an early age this big obligation and responsibility to sort of be a spokesperson for the Jewish people because there were just wasn't anyone else. And so I had to really educate myself so that I could educate them. So I would go to my dad or the rabbis in my synagogue and learn the answers that I had to their questions. But I would say beyond that, like I felt the obligation as a spokesperson, but I didn't really feel the overwhelming urge to learn more about what it meant to be Jewish until I went to Israel when I was 18. And I went on birthright. It was my first time in Israel, and it was the first time that I was ever around a group of Jews.
Right.
And suddenly, it was like I realized there had been this void inside me that maybe I don't really understand Judaism. Like I know this is who I am, and so much of my Jewish identity was tied to the fact that I was different, but it wasn't tied to me understanding what it means to be Jewish, who I am as a Jew.
Right.
So that was kind of the Great Awakening. And I was very fortunate that I came across a great Jewish outreach program on NYU's campus and really started to learn and form a community there.
That's incredible. You know, we hear that all the time from our students. In fact, at the JSU conference that we were on last week, I sat with two teens from North Carolina, and I don't think I've ever met anyone from North Carolina. And they both told me that they knew all the Jews in North
Yeah.
Carolina. And they said that when they got to the conference, their minds were blown because they had never seen so many Jews. And that was in Somerset, New Jersey, at a hotel. I said, one time when you guys come to New York to visit, we'll give you a tour because if
Yeah.
you think this is a lot of Jews, you have not seen anything yet.
It's so true. And I think it was in a weird way, I'm so grateful for the experience of growing up around so few Jews because I never ever took my Jewish identity for granted in the way that I think a lot of kids growing up in New York or around so many Jews do. It's just like everyone's like this, so I'm not that special. But for me, it always felt like this gift that I had, this blessing that I had.
Absolutely. So you're known really now throughout the world as being a passionate advocate for Israel. How did that start? How did you get involved in Israel advocacy? And what drove you to taking on such a strong role?
So this was definitely not the life plan. I didn't study this. I didn't, lie awake dreaming as a child about becoming an advocate for the Jewish people in Israel. Um, it really happened. I don't want to say accidentally because nothing in life is an accident, but it was really the grace of God. I had this platform that was really more about just like fun and games. I would share outfits and accessories and, you know, what I was doing for Shabbos or whatever, just the mumbo jumbo. And I had a following because I got in pretty early in the game in Instagram before I even knew really what it was. And never thought of this as a career path. So what happened essentially was, I went through this period in 2017 where I was going through a really hard time in my life. I had experienced 3 pregnancy losses, and I decided in an impulse move to open up about this on Instagram. And it was really a disruptive move because at the time people were just posting these highly curated beautiful images and nobody was
Right.
like coming on Instagram and crying about their life sorrows. And I didn't intend for it to um, create this pivot in my life, but it did. There was really no turning back after that because I saw that Instagram really was not just a place where we could see pretty pictures, but it was a place where we could really connect with each other. Um, and that was the first time that I realized that I could use this platform for advocacy. And so then I started to just, once I started keeping it real, I was just getting real about all the things that were important to me. Um, and so I would share more about my passion for Israel and Judaism, but it wasn't really until 2021 when there was the barrage of rockets that came from Hamas into Israel, killing a number of innocent civilians. And I was, of course, like all of my Jewish brethren, very upset by this, very heartbroken by this. But what shocked me was seeing how quickly all of these celebrities, social media personalities that I had followed for years, immediately jumped to demonize Israel. This somehow must have been Israel's fault, even before Israel had the chance to retaliate to this attack. And so that was a very a moment of awakening, if you will. I saw uh, just how much of the world was so quick to demonize us. And I also realized, unfortunately, that it's not long after Israel's demonized that Jewish people all over the world that don't even have a direct connection to Israel are demonized and are attacked, and how anti-Semitism immediately follows, in really violent, vicious ways, not just not just on the internet. So I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I had to do something. So a friend of mine reached out to me. She was living in Israel, and she said, "Lizzy, we really need your voice right now. Um, you need to stand up for Israel." And I was like, "Well, I don't know what to say. Like, that's a lot of pressure on me. I'm not an expert on this topic, and like, I don't know how to handle this." And she said, "This is the moment that you were made for, and we need you." And it just, all of a sudden, I felt like maybe she's right. Maybe I was created for this moment. Maybe everything in my life has really been leading me right here. It's not often that I have those moments where, you just see the purpose so clear and so defined. And it's a gift in a way, as hard as it is to take it on. So I wrapped myself in the Israel flag and made a whole post about Israel and the lies that we were seeing all over the internet, and the truth about what Israel is. And it's funny, I recently looked back at that post from the spring of 2021. And at the time, I remember how hard it was for me to make. And it seems to me so benign now looking at it. But at the time, I thought it was so controversial. Of course, I've stepped into a lot more controversy since that first post. But there were immediate consequences. I lost, I think, 30,000 followers. I was dropped by my management company, who said that I was no longer marketable. And I lost jobs, and I lost a lot of relationships that I had had. So it was hard. And I think, we don't necessarily, I think people forget that I am a human being sometimes. And like, this was a really challenging period for me, on my mental health, going through that. Because as I said, like, this wasn't something that I had prepared my whole life for. It was something that I just felt obligated to take on. And then my whole world kind of crumbled around me. But also the path was so clear that I knew I had to keep going. So um, over the past few years, I've really been able to find the tools to keep me strong and keep me grounded through this fight. And it's just been my entire life since that spring day in 2021. And of course, as I was sitting in the bomb shelter in Israel on October 7th, um, I knew I knew exactly what would happen. I was so prepared for the information war, the propaganda that would follow this attack. And I really felt like, wow, God has put me here for this reason, just like my friend said. So um, it's been amazing to be able to use my voice in such a horrible, tragic time for our people. But it's also been really hard.
That is incredible. It's never easy to stand up for what you believe in, to stand up for what you believe in so publicly and out there. But even when people do, to have consequences and to have, I think people know, well, there's going to be consequences if I say the wrong thing. Everything online is forever and you never know who's watching. And I think we all have that sort of in the back of our mind, typically, especially for, the people who I deal with teens, with college students. It's something that might happen for you to deal with such harsh consequences immediately, to lose 30,000 followers and then to lose your management company and to lose relationships that, it's like they say, in tough times, you find out who your real friends are. I guess
Yeah.
you also find out who your real friends are not. But kudos to you for weathering that storm. And, you mentioned the mental health aspect of it. I cannot even imagine, the stress and the heartache, because on one hand, it's so incredibly obvious that you're on the side of truth and justice and you're standing up for what you believe in. And to be on the right side and to stand up and then to have such a negative reaction, and for you to overcome all of that and to embrace this new path and this new role. It's really, honestly, I'm humbled. It's heroic. To see something like that in today's world is really incredible.
Thank you. It did not feel heroic. It just felt like the right thing to do.
I think oftentimes that's where it starts. It feels like it was just the right thing to do at the right time. And I speak to so many of our college students, the kids who go through our programs in high school, and they're on college campuses where they're fighting a similar battle, maybe to a lesser degree, but where they are very quickly finding out who their friends are. The situation on campuses has changed dramatically since October 7th. Our students are facing anti-Semitism. They're facing death threats on campus with little support from teachers and their administrations. They were teenagers. Some of them are still teenagers now.
I know.
What would you tell them, for these 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds who are now in the position that you were in, where everyone is standing up against them, including the people that their teachers, their professors? What would you tell them based on your experience? Like, what would you share with them? Because frankly, I don't know how you do it, and sometimes I don't know how they do it, but I'm sure they would appreciate to hear from you.
Well, first of all, you said they're fighting maybe to a lesser degree than I am. I think just showing up as a Jewish student on a college campus, you're fighting a much bigger battle than I ever had to fight or ever fight in the work that I do. You are in the eye of the storm. And I have met a lot of people that have broken my heart this past year, from families of hostages, families of victims of the attacks. And the thing that broke my heart the most was seeing what these college students have been up against, and these high school students that I just met at your conference. Some of these stories that I heard from them, I mean, tore my heart out, because it's really like a piece of your innocence is robbed. You're having this experience that is supposed to be the one of the most beautiful coming of age moments of your life, and it is completely tainted by this wave of hate against you. For what? For simply existing?
Right.
For being born?
Right.
So just showing up, having the courage to be a presence there is huge, is a huge part of the fight. I don't know that I would have been able to do what they're doing. And, one of the things that has reassured me more than anything is seeing these heroes emerge. And I tell these kids, I'm like, these are the moments when heroes are born. When you go up against this kind of hatred, unfounded hatred, and you stand strong and you hang on to who you are and you don't cower. And, wearing a Magen David or wearing a yarmulke has become a symbol of resistance, which is insane, but it has. So every time you do that, you are doing a heroic act. And, I think people in general tend to get caught up in when they think of a hero or they think of leadership, they think of these like grandiose big acts or big audiences or having the loudest voice. And that's not really what makes a hero. It's somebody who stays true to themselves and stands their ground in the face of anything. And I've seen kids do that in every shade this past year, and it's so inspiring to me. And how articulate these kids are, it blows my mind. I
Yeah.
did not sound like that when I was their age.
Neither did I.
It's unbelievable. I'm like, who's your vocabulary teacher? Like, what? They're amazing, and it's really, you know, that it's as heartbroken as I have been seeing what they've had to deal with. I've been even more inspired seeing how they've faced it head on. And that is amazing. I'm in the position now as a mom of kids where I don't know if I would want to subject them to the things that are happening on campuses. But I do know that these kids are making a difference for the future of Jews in America.
You're very vocal about your Jewish identity and your own personal growth. And As you know, JSU and NCSY are really sort of vehicles of Jewish growth, giving these kids opportunity, giving them space to learn and to grow as Jews, as Jewish leaders, and to be hopefully also strong advocates for Israel. Was there someone in your journey, in your path, that you could point to and say, you know, that person really inspired me, that individual? Without them, I wouldn't be here. Is there somebody that you would identify as like one of your Jewish role models?
You know, I was going through a bit of a internal, I don't want to say crisis, but like identity, um, like a finding myself period, as I think most kids do in high school and college. Um, and there was this one part of me that really wanted to be cool and running with the fun crowd and out at the glamorous places, and I would always feel so empty the next morning. There was never any real fulfillment there. Like it would be like, okay, I did that. What's the next one that I'm going to go? You know, there was never any real sense of feeling whole. And, you know, the only thing that I've really been able to use to describe it is sort of like if you just picture like this God size hole, like right here. And it was like I just had this void. And I would try to fill it with all these external things, and nothing was working. And I was really, really unhappy. Um, and so I found myself. So you know what? I called my great uncle, who's a rabbi in Baltimore at Ner Yisrael. He was the only religious person in my family, or direct relative in my family. And I always thought of him as like that weird relative that had 12 kids. And like, I was like, oh, like those people over in Baltimore. And every weekend that I was in New York at NYU, he would call me and he'd be like, Lizzy, you know, you have relatives in Baltimore and we're dying to have you for Shabbat. It's a short train ride. And I'd be like, yeah, no, thanks. I'm going out. Um, and so I was like, you know what? I'm going to call my Uncle Leonard. And so I said, you know, I'm really interested in learning more about Judaism. I have no idea what to do, where to look, where to go. And so he introduced me to this guy, Rabbi Schipple, Johnny Schipple, who then introduced me to the rabbis of Maor on NYU's campus, Rabbi Aaron Eisenman, Rabbi Shmalo, Rabbi Aharon Glazer. I mean, it was suddenly I was surrounded by rabbis. And
Hold on, did you just say, I don't mean to cut you off. You say Rabbi Shmalo. Do you mean Gamliel Shmalo?
yes.
So just going off script a little bit here, Rabbi Shmalo was my Rebbe when I was in yeshiva in Israel a long time ago, and he was my favorite. So this is very exciting for me. That I know for you, it's another name in your list
No,
of
Rabbi
inspiring people.
Shmalo
But
was a very critical part of my path.
incredible.
Very
Me
much.
too.
I loved him, and he was I would always tease him because he was so serious, and I'd always try to
Yeah.
see if we could like push him, because that's my style, right? I'm a little bit irreverent like that. But he really was amazing for me. And I remember him telling me when I was in college, he said, Lizzy, you would be an amazing teacher. And I was like, what, me? And it's so interesting because even though I'm not a teacher in the traditional sense, I spend most of my days educating people. And so, you know, his sharing that to me really empowered me to feel like, okay, maybe I can actually teach people. Maybe people would actually take me seriously, because I didn't really take myself so seriously. I still don't in a lot of ways. But so I was surrounded by these rabbis, and they were like, oh my gosh, this girl, we have to save her. We have to, you know, we can really redirect her. And so they were amazing. And I ended up spending a lot of Shabbats in Passaic, and getting sort of adopted by that whole crew. And I felt very much at home. And I felt like I was getting all these pieces that I was missing. I wouldn't say it was like the cure all for everything, but it was the missing piece for me in understanding what it meant to be Jewish was understanding what it meant to be Jewish, right? So I didn't know any of that. And so I was going to these classes every week, and I was started keeping Shabbat and started keeping kosher. And then it came time that I was graduating from college, and I was graduating from the same time from this Maor fellowship, and Rabbi Shmalo and Rabbi E sat down with me and my parents and were like, "You need to go to Israel. Like we want to recommend you for this scholarship, and we think you need to go to Israel. Like we think this is an investment for the rest of your life." My parents lost their minds; they absolutely freaked out. Um, but I did it, and I knew that this was a very different path than they had anticipated me taking, and I did end up going to Israel, to Neve for the year. And you can look at everything in hindsight. And it's like, if I hadn't made that call to my great uncle, would I be sitting here talking to you today?
Wow. I mean, I'm at a loss for words. It's really an incredible story. Let me ask you a question. Stepping away from Lizzy, the Jewish leader, and shifting a little bit to Lizzy, the mom.
Yeah.
We have some similarities. You and I, obviously, we share the Rabbi Shmalo connection. I am also married to a doctor. My wife is an ER doc out on Long Island.
Oh, wow.
So I can commiserate with you on what
Yes.
it's like to be married to a doctor sometimes. And I don't know if you suffer from, if you ever do Shabbat meals with other doctors and you have to sit and listen to the everything that they go through. But I also
No,
have
my husband's a plastic surgeon. So everyone that talks to us just wants a consult.
we get that a lot with people who bring their kids who injured themselves. They
Yes.
bring them to my
All
wife
the
to
time.
figure it out. But I also have, I have four girls, and my older two are 13 and 12. And I think you have a daughter who's
Just turned
around,
12. Just had her
just
bat
turned 12.
mitzvah.
Okay, we just had my 12-year-old's bat mitzvah.
Mazel tov.
And thank you, you too. And one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is, in some ways, speaking to college students is easy because they're adults mostly,
Yeah.
and even high school students, the ones that we deal with are bright, intellectual. They've come to learn and they want to
Yeah.
know what we're talking about. I find sometimes relating to my kids and trying to teach them and inspire them is challenging
Yeah.
because it's almost easier. Like you said, you're sort of like a teacher now. It's very different teaching your students than it is sometimes teaching your own children. Do you have any advice? How do you do it? How do you relate to your kids in a way where you have so much to give, but sometimes with your own children, it can be somewhat challenging?
I think I'm in a bit of a unique position because being that I'm a Bal Tshuva and my kids are growing up in an Orthodox home, going to Jewish day school, like they're the ones most of the time teaching me um, in terms of actual Jewish studies type of content. But in terms of being a proud Jew or being um, committed to doing the right thing, standing up for Israel, all of that, you know, it's just, I just lead by example. It's not that I ever sit down and tell them, we're going to have a conversation about why, because they wouldn't care.
Right.
But it's like, we make it, I always joke with the work that I do, it's the family business. And I tell my kids, I'm like, you're a Savetsky. Like today we're hanging hostage posters, or, today we're gonna talk to this IDF soldier, and we've spent about 6 weeks of the past 3 months in Israel as a family, doing service work, going to the hospitals and meeting with the injured soldiers, talking to the orphans, getting them involved.
Right.
And I think that that's honestly the most effective way to teach kids is give them a task, make them feel like they're a part of the solution, empower them to know that their role in this world, no matter how young they are, is critical. And
Yep.
I think that I see it in them how they feel confident because they know that they have something to offer to their people. And I think really at the end of the day, all any of us want, no matter what age we are, is to have a sense of purpose. And so giving them that, I think, is the best education that I could ever offer them.
Absolutely. And you've had a lot of really amazing successes since you've embarked on this journey, and really an incredible and a really cool career arc and story. One of the things that I like to try to do with my students, with the fellows who I work with at the Judah Fellowship, which is our campus program, is to teach them through failure. Failure is, one of the world's best teachers. And a good friend of mine, Dr. Eliezer Jones, we joke about this, that it shouldn't be called failing, it should be called learning.
For sure.
But, you have all these incredible successes. Was there an example or a story that you have of a time where, you tried to do something, but it maybe didn't go the way you planned? I mean, there's always something to learn, but maybe a story that didn't go
I'm
quite the way you
laughing.
thought.
I'm laughing. I mean, I fail constantly, first of all. What I do, there's never been a roadmap or a manual, so I make it up as I go. And a lot of what I do is trial and error. I would say like the most public failure that I had was attempting to do the Real Housewives of New York, um, which really blew up in my face. I went in with such an idealistic state of mind. I'm going to go on. I'm going to be such a light for the Jewish people. I'm going to, bring to the masses, our beautiful modern Orthodox life. And it really did not go as planned. Um, and it was painful at the time. And there was so much public controversy surrounding and lies and just a media firestorm. But I see now, first of all, that experience gave me such a thick skin, which I use every day. It's what gives me the strength to stand up to these pro Hamas protesters, because there's so little that somebody could say to me that would stop me from doing what I'm doing because of everything that I've gone through. It also, I've been able to see the positive in every negative. It's it's given me, it elevated my profile, even if it was not necessarily for in a good way. I think once I was able to really show in my own words and through my own work who I am, that the people had discovered me from that experience, maybe didn't come to me expecting to hear the messages that I've given, and now they do. And that's amazing. Like the more people that can hear my message, the better, regardless of why or how they came to my page. And I think failure is so important. And like I look back at this past year, and um, it's been one of the hardest years of our lifetime, if not the hardest year of our lifetime collectively as a people. Um, and there have been so many moments of growth, and you just can't take yourself to the next level or realize your potential without challenges, struggles, and failures. It's the only way to really know what you're made of.
Absolutely, such wise words. Thank you so much. If you'll permit me one last question here
Of
before
course.
we finish this up, um, you know, we're going to have all these college students and high school students and probably many of their family members who watch our show, who listen to the podcast. Is there a message as we conclude here that you would want to share with them, just to inspire them? Anything that you would want to share with all of these NCSY and JSU students who are ready to hear what you have to say, honestly?
You know, I am so far from being perfect. I am a deeply flawed human being. I've struggled with addiction. I've struggled with a number of things that I think people wouldn't necessarily put in the bucket of somebody that they consider a role model. And I am able to do everything I do because, I don't strive for perfection. I just strive to do whatever I can to make the world a better place in whatever way I can. And I think once I was able to really let go of this idea that I have to be perfect, I was able to accomplish so much more. Um, but the thing that grounds me every day is my connection to my Judaism. Because without that, what are we even fighting for? We really need to have a deep sense of who we are, and it's such a personal thing for everyone. Like everyone's relationship with God is individual, and that's why I get so upset when I see Jews judging each other. I know it's a part of any community, but each person's relationship with God is individual and unique. And we know what makes us feel connected, whether it's rapping tefillin, learning Torah, having a conversation with a fellow Jew or a Jewish mentor. Um, I think these are the things that we need to be pulling from daily and more than ever. Also, prayer for me has been so critical, and I mean just talking in my own words to God, and not necessarily reading from a siddur, but actually just communicating. And so, stay grounded in your Jewish identity, and don't try to be perfect.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lizzy. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much for being so giving of your time and for joining us. Everybody, this has been NCSY Pulse with Lizzy Savetsky. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at NCSY Pulse and to like and subscribe on YouTube at NCSY Pulse. We'll talk to you soon.